Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the lunch zone. Today we're going to continue playing Yooka-Laylee.
Here, I'll sit
All right.
here, and maybe we can get all three of us in the shot.
I'm Nathan Humple. I'm a metadata librarian here at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee.
I'm Thomas Malby, professor of anthropology here at UWM.
Stuart Moulthrop, professor of English.
All right. So this game we started last week, and it's a collectathon. Lots of things to collect and places to go and little mini games to do.
I just read that little tip, out of the context of the game.
Yeah.
Each Ghost Rider requires different tactics to capture, and I read it as if that's a statement about Ghost Riders in everyday life, and that really twisted my thinking for a moment. It was kind of fun, actually. I mean, maybe Ghost Riders each are that different from each other, and they really require.
Yeah, so the premise of this is something to do with a certain bad guy stealing all of the books in the world so that he can... I'm not sure. We're not sure yet, but that's what's going on. Okay, I gotta remember my controls here. So yeah, I didn't like this game initially. I didn't like the level design. It seemed really difficult to pick up what I was supposed to do. But I'm kind of coming around to it just because it's so simplistic in its what it needs. I mean, it's basically the opposite of The Witcher 3 in that regard.
So when did it come out?
Oh, a couple years ago. It's it's a throwback, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it really reminds me of some of the, the Mario type 3D
Right.
sort of thing.
It's got that 2D into 3D.
Right, the platformer thing, and I was actually, the reason I asked is because I was noticing the camera controls, and I was like, that's a little wonky. You can't exactly tell your depth, relative to something like a butterfly or whatever very easily.
Oops.
At least you can swim.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's not death. So often water is death.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is a strange thing about computer games.
Yeah. Well, I think that speaks...
Pour some water over your computer.
Yeah, right.
I think that kind of speaks to how, they sort of view... It's a difference between environmental realism and what possibilities they have in gameplay, right? Water was death because they didn't feel like making you have the ability to swim, basically.
Well, yeah, and it becomes a different visual option, kind of texture option, sort of, for whatever is not safe ground, right?
Right.
It could be lava in one, it could be something else in another.
Yeah, well, again, to recur to the processor, it's that stuff that's harder to process.
Yeah, that's it too.
Yeah. Well, all of these, aren't all of this way of thinking, which I think we really could stand to do more of, right? Is the way that code, reflects this programmer living, an attitude, because the machines have shaped their subjectivity.
Yeah, I think you could probably say that about, classical music. Like, I mean, why aren't there more glissandos in Mozart? Because he hated trombones. I made that up,
Right.
but,
Well, I was just, because I play bass guitar, I was just watching some lessons of this great guy on YouTube, and he was talking about how when he picks up these two very different classic bass guitars, the Fender Jazz and the Fender Precision, both very old bass guitars, been around forever, but two of the greatest guitars ever made, but they're utterly different. Their electronics are different, their setup is different, even the neck and the scales are different, and he said something interesting. He said, I find I want to make different choices when I'm playing one versus the other.
Yeah.
The instrument is prompting a different outlook on music, you know, which is a important lesson to remember.
Yeah, and we don't often think of computers as instruments, but and then there's that whole sort of semantic drift of scientific instrument, musical instrument.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, this is not, games are not the only medium that technology informs the possibilities of the medium, right?
Right.
Movies are a great example. I mean, you could even look at... I mean, if you look at the more experimental books, I mean, there has to be... Who knows if somebody wanted to do a certain layout that really wasn't feasible in a mass market book,
Or Emily Dickinson's manuscript poems, right? That are basically kind of, paper sculptures held together with pins.
Yeah, that's
Meanwhile, we're talking to I don't know what is that.
I thought it was a light bulb for a second, but now I don't think so. Vendy Tonics. It's a vending machine.
It's a vending machine.
With a kind of 50s bow.
Oh yeah. I don't understand the aesthetics of this game necessarily, and I don't think it matters. I think Wellard Game 1.
Wow, this is very BioShock.
Yeah, right.
Right. All the
I'm gonna try the 64-bit
advertising language.
Well, and the vending machines and the tonics, right? Specifically.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is.
Oh wow! What happened?
So this is they made they made a filter so it looks more like a Nintendo 64.
Who did it? Who made it?
The game developers, and so that's one of the tonics that you can activate.
Are all the tonics things that change, the kind of skin or style of the
No,
game?
in fact, I'll go back because the other tonic that I had an option of.
Hi guys.
Hey.
I have food. Do you want me to eat it out here, not to bother anyone, or do you want me to just come in?
I think if you're not close to the mic, it should be all right.
All right, I'll be way over here in the corner.
So there are tonics that affect gameplay, or your
Yeah, so this Weller gained 1 + 1 butterfly health spot, right? So it doesn't affect the graphics, but it affects the gameplay, right? But I thought, and I guess that filter was added somewhat recently. This game, like I said, is a couple of years old, and it was, I think, added sometime this year, just to sort of give it that different quality, which is kind of funny because this game is using much more modern graphics, but it's still trying to evoke that old school Nintendo's. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and it's like, I'm getting a lot of Sonic, in this game. Or no, what's the other one? Sonic with the rings and the floating around. And,
it's cold in there.
I
can't go in there. Okay.
Well,
yeah, I
now we have a variation on water, frozen water.
Right.
I noted in my blog post also that the name of this game is Yooka-Laylee, and it's made by the same developers of the N64 game BanjoKazooie.
Right.
So it's obviously really borrowing off of some sort of shared nostalgia.
Speaking of musical instruments,
That's right. Probably, yeah.
oh, look at that old cell phone.
Yeah.
And it kind of, sort of an Indiana Jones kind of look almost on the guy.
Well, this guy is he's the sleazy salesman.
Hey,
oh, wow, we
Ryan,
have
did you
a
not
full
pick
house
up any
today.
food?
We are gonna have a full
No,
house. That's
no, I
great.
had to touch his phone.
Okay, Sonar Shop, Slurp
Thank
Shop.
you, GSGMSU. They're now hosting us.
Oh, cool.
Oh, nice.
Thank you.
Got 38, Slurp State.
Put that in the annual report, except I've already sent it.
We got hosted by we got hosted by somebody yesterday when we were during the arena.
We need to get that in the discussion at the meeting.
Someone said to follow.
No, you can sit here.
Let's not throw it.
So this guy will sell you moves,
Oh.
some that open up different areas of the game.
Now, did you have Josh last week for the first playing of this?
No,
Because remember, Josh was pushing for this game, and you were skeptical.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It's just back to where you opened us today, right?
yes.
I'll pull up
And
the chat
just as a kind
so
of
you can
running
see.
tally here, I got to say I'm more. I would say I'm less enthused rather than more enthused so far. I don't know what it is about the game so far.
Well, what is I mean, what can we talk about with this game? I'm, one of the things that I think is an easy sell with the. First of all, I have to say, talking and trying to read these things is a pain in the ass. But that's.
Do you want me to read them out loud?
No, thank you. But part of it is there's a lot of text in this game, and most of it I don't care about. That was one of the complaints I had last week. Was there's a lot of text, and I think. And again, this is how streaming kind of affects my enjoyment of the game. I don't care about it, but there's information in the text that I probably should care about.
Well, that does raise a question that I want to ask Stuart, if I can formulate it well, not being someone from English, but is it like highly noticeable to someone who pays a lot of attention to sort of the use of words in cultural products that, for example, when game designers set up something like that kind of dialogue and where you're seeing the animated faces talking and you get the line of text, that not a lot of thought has gone into just maybe what would be the right amount, right length of a phrase to fit the attention that we're, things like that. The rhythm of it seems off to me. I only know it kind of from music, but there's a clunkiness to a lot of that.
Did this game start in the Japanese market?
No.
This was made by American developers.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's an interesting difference.
They have more
Right.
density, right? So
You
they
think
can.
of Katamari
Oh,
Damacy,
right.
where text goes on and on and on and on, and you just go like, oh, yeah, right, sure. And you find yourself, zapping through and cutting it off.
Yes.
But I've been told that has to do with transliteration.
I believe that, right. In
You're
Pokemon
dealing-
games, I noticed that too.
Ooh.
Yeah.
You're in Chinese characters or you're in Japanese
In kanji, yeah.
kanji or whatever. That you've got much more efficiency, so you can read that.
I see. That makes sense.
Which, by the way, was what I've heard. That's part of why there's maybe not why, but a possibility of having so much more text in Final Fantasy games is because you could pack it into the game cartridge because of the efficiency of the characters, which is again another. And we were talking about how technology kind of affects a game's makeup, and I think that's another.
Then again, we had a reference to ghostwriters on the way in. Maybe it's just all about the writers.
I think it is.
Let's have a contest between materiality, representation, the gamer practice.
No
they
one
bring to
actually
it.
pays them by the word.
Right.
And also, isn't it borrowing or like trying to create this experience for different kinds of players? So some people might be playing Yooka-Laylee just thinking like, ooh, this is an interesting challenge. How do I get across this windy bridge, right?
Right.
Some people might be playing to relive the glory of BanjoKazooie or these other kind of satirical kind of games that came out in the 90s that this is aping off of. And in which case, like maybe these unnecessary conversations for that player are really important for establishing the feel.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, I would have to ask. Has anybody played BanjoKazooie?
No,
I have,
bring it up.
I own it.
Forever ago, but yeah.
Yeah.
We were kids in the 90s. We had 64s.
Was there a lot of text in that?
Yes.
Okay.
And in Conker's Bad Fur Day, which also kind of emulates a little bit.
Yeah, and that was an interesting release for the N64.
Is Conker's Bad Fur Day made by the same people, by Rare?
It's rare.
Yeah.
So it was probably the same developers
Something to
as
do with
this
those
then.
cannonballs.
I'm sort of interested in
Sure.
revisiting Thomas's question about rhythm of games, at least the text of the game. And I'm wondering if maybe, rhythm sort of works cinematically, but I wonder if more attention couldn't be paid to sort of the effort of going through the text in terms of the reward of having gone through the text. I'm thinking about classic WoW, where you weren't really given a lot of help via the HUD. and so you had to read the text to find out where to go, where to find Mandrake's wife or wherever, whatever his name was.
Yeah, that classic one from the Torrent.
Yeah,
that was from the Torrent starter area. Yeah,
it's funny because I think that those kind of like those things where you have to actually read a wall of text and like understand the world better, they're so annoying from like the player perspective. Like, oh, I just want to go complete the quest, get the gold, get the new gloves. But no. But let me finish just a sec. But in retrospect, I think that's what I loved about WoW was that immersiveness I got from doing those things.
Yeah.
And
I just like WoW now because I'm clicking, going to the thing on the map, doing the thing, running back.
Right.
I'm just moving from icon to icon.
Well, that's been a long-standing tension. You know, you've got studios that have gone the other way and have just invested lots of resources in great writing, great dialogue. You know, things like BioWare. You know, that's something they're really proud of. Is their kind of dialogue tree. They even have a development process devoted to making that work, right? And when I would play those games, I was thrilled to read what someone was saying to me.
Well,
you know?
But a dialogue tree is something rather different than,
than a quest.
A quest, or what we're seeing here, which is just kind of a gloss on the actions.
That's right. So disaggregating all those different functions is probably useful, right?
You have to kind of balance it, right?
Yeah.
What is this dialogue really serving? Is it helping the player do a thing, or just sort of there?
All right, where the hell am I going?
That actually would be an interesting avenue to go. So in the course I'm teaching this fall, we always read this closing statement by Roman Jakobson, Linguistics and Poetics, given to a linguistics conference in 1950s, when the big controversy was a bunch of linguists saying we should just do away with all this kind of poetic stuff and attention to sort of the emotive elements or all these other things, just get technical, and he doesn't want any part of that. Well, it's like 3 articles packed in one, and what was delivered as a lecture is not clear to me. Like, it's gigantic, but anyway,
more like a Fidel Castro speech.
Yeah, right. But in there, and it's just a pragmatic scheme. It doesn't correspond to necessarily anything sort of out there in the world, but it's a useful breakdown and say, well, there's 7 functions or 6 functions to language, right? And you've got these referential aspects, and you've got these emotive aspects and connotative aspects, and I won't get into all of them, but it kind of is in the same spirit as saying, well, quote-unquote dialogue in games with an in-game character can serve a lot of different functions, and what we're out of it is very different depending upon what we're trying to accomplish in the game or what the game is doing for us.
Certainly.
Our scholarship could probably use some of that schematic language for sorting some of this out.
Yeah, I'm not sure anyone's ever done much with text in games, and there probably articles. There's no book that I know of.
Yeah, and there's a couple things with the text in this game. I mean, there's a lot of games now that, of course, are using voiceover, and this one is not. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure if it was a budget thing or if it was a throwback thing. There's a lot of different reasons to not use voiceover.
This was crowdfunded, right?
Yes, it was.
So do you think this was a generational nostalgia pitch? So is this about...
Oh, yeah.
Well, the dads playing with their kids because they love BanjoKazooie?
Just looking at the level design, it looks like, late 90s, early 2000s 3D games.
So the appeal is
everything is big and clear,
shaped heavily by people
it's like
having a nostalgic experience, right? And getting to say,
that. Well, let me show you something
that.
here.
You can there's a filter.
Yeah, there is
That's
a filter.
Amazing.
Yeah, they showed us this before. It was just before you came in. It was like a Nintendo 64 filter, or what was that you said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Kickstarter labeled this as a spiritual successor to BanjoKazooie and like those kinds of titles.
Which is what it's sort of speaking around the fact that they no longer have the
rights.
Yeah,
exactly.
Well, it reminds me of something too, like Pillars of Eternity. As a spiritual successor of the old Baldur's Gate, Neverwinter Nights type games.
Same developers, but just different, IP.
Organizational. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, so that's the
Yeah.
filter there. What's kind of fun about it too is it runs a little choppier.
The whole standing and everything.
That's
is
not even 30 frames per second,
And-
is it? That's got to be like 24, like movie frames.
Maybe,
per second.
yeah.
Oh, what a racket! You could sell someone a television that with a special filter that turns it back to black and white.
So wait, are there a bunch of different filters or just that one?
Just that one, as far as I know.
So far, maybe you
Yeah.
get more later.
I mean, yeah.
What's
might-
another game?
Could you hook anything that
This
this
is-
plays
this
on
is
up
such
to a
generational
CRT TV?
commentary, because when the resolution drops like that, I
I'm sorry,
immediately read that as dysfunction. Right?
Yeah.
Something's
Yeah.
gone wrong.
Well, it's like the old printers, right? A 300 DPI printer when Stuart and I were young was like, hey, this is amazing. I've
You
never
had to
seen
go to the
text this
computer
great,
center,
you know?
right?
And,
Yeah.
and then 600 DPI came out, and suddenly the 300 DPI was crap. Who would read that, you know?
Oh, that's like
And on
street
and on.
resolutions too. I remember I was playing something in, at the time it was like playing something in 640 by 480 was like super clear.
Yeah.
And I also remember trying 800 by 600 and being like, well, it doesn't really seem that different. But it is. I mean, it was just that the graphics in the games weren't necessarily designed.
And what happened to the web? What happened to web pages is they shrank, right? All that stuff built in the 90s to 640 by 480.
Yes,
Now
right.
we put it on a 2,000 pixel screen, and it's a postage stamp.
Yeah.
It's like with music too, right? Because like you think about like MP3s, they've slowly become more and more lossless over time.
Oh, I'm out of energy here.
Did the audio change at all when you shifted to the the
that's
Did it go
CRTV
mono? I don't know.
mode?
I don't know.
That'd be interesting. Like even if it was just like a switch to mono, and then you could put like a pretty simple filter on that.
Yeah, I was curious. I don't know what systems this came out for. 360 and
Yooka-Laylee?
PC? Yeah.
Linux, Mac, Windows, PS4, Xbox One.
Okay.
It came out in 2017, so it's a pretty new game.
But
and
none of
Switch.
those things. I mean, you could. I'm sure there's a way to hook up a Windows machine to a CRT TV, but
Oh, sure. I mean,
but it
you
would
gotta get
take
it.
a lot of effort.
Well, you gotta get some sort of special hookup, some sort of adapter
You just need
for
a
it.
VGA converter. I
Or
guess.
HDMI.
HDMI. They make
Yeah,
those?
yeah, yeah.
Does we played Hotline Miami on stream? Does that have filters? Visual
No,
filters?
there was a couple games that we played with filters. One was one of my favorite filters was Super Win the Game, and that has a really good CRT filter. So much so that it like simulates things. It simulates the edge of the screen reflecting the actual light of the screen.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, that's
pretty
dope.
good. I know the Nintendo games on the Switch collection. You can turn on a CRT.
Yeah, and it works pretty. The problem with not doing that is the games were designed for that.
Yeah.
And so the graphics look so jagged.
Yeah.
If you don't turn that on.
Totally.
I'm wondering if Baba Is You, which we played like a couple weeks ago. I think that might. There's a game I played this year that definitely has a filter section, so I'm trying to remember which one.
I want to say Cave Story Plus for the
It
Switch
might.
had a ton of different filters and music filters. Like you could change it to 8-bit sound, maybe even like full orchestra. Lots of.
Well, that game went through so many different iterations too, because it was Cave Story. We haven't actually played Cave Story. That'd be a good one to play, because I think it was free for a while, or
I think it was a browser game.
yeah, it might have been. Yeah.
I gotta say, all of these kind of ways in which, whether we talk about, skins for an Overwatch character, or for your WoW character, or filters for a game, they all tend to sort of concretize or reify an idea that there's a distinction between the form, which is just the skin things come in, and something else, which is the real content behind it, and that's that divide, I think, becomes kind of sociologically or anthropologically really, really important when you think about things like who has access to make what kind of changes for what.
Mm-hmm.
Who gets to sort of play with filters, and who gets to actually get in and actually change the source code.
Well, and of course, I mean, the outfits and a lot of that. A lot of the aesthetic stuff is monetized in a way in free-to-play games where you buy different costumes or you buy different skins, which it plays along with that, certainly.
Yeah, and a very kind of consumerist, you know, consumption-driven kind of capitalist logic, right? Like, what you need are more outfits.
Yeah, and it's not something I've ever gotten into. It doesn't strike me as particularly interesting, but obviously it's interesting enough that it makes money, you know, so there's enough people that are interested in that ability.
I was talking to someone last month who spends a lot of time and money on a virtual garden of some kind. This is you can call it a game, but it's really, you know, a virtual garden.
It's a bit like Farmville was back in the
But not. But anyway, you know, it was clear to me that if she had the free time to go home and actually garden, she would have done that. But this just kind of virtualized it. And it seemed to have the same pleasures for her. She was very proud of her garden. She was proud of the time she'd spent on it.
I don't know. I guess I'm too much of a phenomenologist. Like, there's a part of me that really starts. I hate to make that move where you wonder if someone really knows what something is of value to them, but it's not the same as, you know, feeling the dirt in your hands and, you know.
This is somebody who I think spends close to 12 hours a day at work. For whatever reason, I don't know.
I'm not sure.
So
I'm
you know,
supposed to do
And
something.
might not
with
have the
photos.
space.
and I have I don't know anything about her home life. But
Yeah, well, those
Apartment living?
the analogies of it, you know, gets really complex, right? It's neither it is or it isn't an analog,
Yeah.
right? There's a lot of different things in motion there relative to, like you say, her own context of working a lot, you know.
Yeah.
So right now, what I'm doing is not knowing where I'm supposed to be going, which is one of the frustrations I find with these games. Is the levels are open, which is kind of cool.
Oof, you almost fell off there.
Do monsters respawn?
They do, yeah.
Oh, there's
Yeah, that's not
quite a-
helpful.
Yeah, that's what I wrote about. You talking about that for the blog post this week.
The monsters respawning,
No, open stages and the getting lost.
Yeah, it's frustrating. It's,
Yeah.
but I think it's part of the appeal for some people. I know. I was kind of frustrated with Super Mario Odyssey because it has that kind of game design, and somebody pointed out that Super Mario Galaxy kind of tried to simulate the more side-scrolling elements, the sort of straightforward level design. And so when they had the opportunity to change that, for the next one, they took a more open world approach that was more analogous to Super Mario 64. So it's a different feel, and it's a different kind of.
Can you get an adventure line or something like it at some point? Can you call up a queue for where you're supposed to head?
There's butterflies.
One thing I'll
In
note
Odyssey?
in regards to the Mario games from between Galaxy and Odyssey, which are definitely structurally very different games, there is Super Mario 3D World for the Wii U, which bridges that gap because it's like a pretty linear stage design, but across the stage there are collectibles hidden that you have to kind of find, and so it kind of encourages that kind of like an exploratory thing, but within the more fixed linear kind of stage, as opposed to this where
Little Donkey Kong country-ish.
And one of the things I noted in the post is that while this can be frustrating for a novice player, like where am I supposed to go, what am I supposed to do, the open layout of these levels is really the reason why a lot of speedrunners might want to play this game is because then it becomes, how do I know where all of them are, how do I find the most efficient path in between these?
Yeah.
And that's why Super Mario Odyssey, the game you're comparing this to, is probably the most popular speedrunning title that released this decade. And the most popular speedrunning title of all time is its spiritual predecessor, Super Mario 64.
That's interesting. You know, the running then, you know, is an index of how much time you've invested in the game, right? And the appeal, in part, to stream comes from all those people who have played enough to become aware of how much time it would take to know that much about the game, you know, and then there's a satisfaction in seeing someone else actually embody it, you know.
Please help.
Oh jeez, that was a terrible pun.
So they're supposed to be like, remind you of like maybe the Grim Fandango and the Treasure Island games. It's like a pirate skeleton.
I mean, Monkey Island?
Yeah, Monkey Island, sorry.
Not sure how to kill these guys.
I assume there's probably a lot of callbacks in this to other games from this era. Or I guess not from its contemporary era, but the era it's harkening to.
There you go.
Okay, that'll help. Get back here. Damn it. I can't aim that thing. Ah!
Do you have to kill them?
No, I just want to figure out how I
Okay.
can. There we go. Alright. That's another thing with these games is that they have a tendency to... I mean, and it makes sense. There's different tactics. You have to do this for the different enemy types. And a lot of times, you know, when I start, it's like, I don't know what the hell to do here. And frustration might be, you know, can I even do anything with that enemy? Because it's possible that I don't have the right ability, right?
That would get tonic or...
It doesn't seem... Oh, sorry.
Sorry, yeah.
I was going to say, the one that you were struggling with earlier doesn't seem to really telegraph clearly how to deal with it.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't seem...
Well,
it's a little arbitrary that you throw...
sonic waves, yeah.
Where in Witcher, it's more contextually defined in game.
Or even that guy.
But Diegesis.
He's got spikes on his head, so you know not to jump on him. You have to, you know,
Yeah.
swing into him.
But I think you actually can jump on
I
it.
guess it's
Oh,
I
really?
guess those guys were.
It was so close to
They're
good design.
aesthetics. They're
It was so great that it
aesthetics
worked out.
spikes.
I think these guys are supposed to signal that they're floating, right?
Yeah.
So that you
So
need
you
to get
jump.
up to get that last blow in or something.
Yeah.
And then
what
they've got the
Oh,
they've got
man.
the spikes on the bottom that you can remove with the sonic boom.
Yeah.
Right.
But there's no way to really know that except for trial and error. Which, I mean, you know.
Well,
worthwhile.
that's and that's what
Somewhat.
kind of these games do oftentimes.
So is maybe the hallmark of like this kind of game or a good design isn't necessarily that it's aesthetically telegraphed to you, but that it only takes maybe one or two encounters to completely figure it out. So like I'm thinking of like a Koopa in Mario, but then again, a Koopa is kind of aesthetically like it's a turtle in a shell. You jump on it, oh, the shell remains. You can kick the shell.
Well, it's almost
That-
hard to tell with a Koopa because we understand that so deeply.
Yeah, you're right.
You know,
you're right.
But I remember in the early days, Super Mario World on the SNES, it was the color of the shell. If you
Yeah.
if you got into a level and you saw a new colored shell,
That's
you were
true.
ready. Okay,
this is
all
different.
bets are off. Who knows
Right.
what's gonna happen now? You know? Or if it's wearing a little sorcerer's hat, for example.
Oh,
Oh,
God,
yeah,
those
yeah.
guys. Ah, damn.
The Hammer Bros are wearing helmets, so you know you can't jump on them or whatever.
Yeah.
So maybe those are just better designed games. Maybe they
I
are
think
visually
they are
defined.
I think it is, and I think it's not something that you necessarily think about when you're playing the games is how well designed and how telegraphed they are. You know, it's a really hard thing to do.
Yeah.
And comparing anything to a Mario game is not very fair.
Oh yeah, because they're obviously
Right.
some of the best design games in that biz.
Well, it's clear that some major companies have, invested in a particular dimension of game design expertise, right?
Mhm.
So, if BioWare is really invested in, dialogue and character development, Nintendo, well, invested in a lot of things, but amongst them, that kind of semiotic signaling, right? Of between you and any given thing in the environment, some little inkling of what the interaction or what the threat might be, which is all the more amazing because it's there's a cross-cultural element over that history that has been borne out as still successful despite the cultural distance where it began.
Yeah, when you think about, the signals in Mario games, they're not that. They don't make that much sense. A leaf turns you into a raccoon and you fly. It doesn't
Right.
make a lot of sense, but for some reason it works.
Well, you look if you look deeply into it, you look into things like, all right, what's the level where this first becomes available? What space do you have to play around with it? How much time are you given to encounter it and to practice it? And things like with the fire flower, for example. I'm not picking that up only when I'm in the middle of a bunch of enemies. I got a chance to sort of toss it around for a bit and get to know what's going on.
A game that doesn't have those constraints because it's a roguelike, but does something I think to alleviate that would be Binding of Isaac. And that is kind of returning to a previous discussion we were having. All the items in Binding of Isaac, they're like let's say you pick up like laser eyes, and like it says, and like there'll be flavor text like talking about the laser eyes that also will kind of inform you as to what they do. Like now you shoot lasers out of your eyes or whatever. And so like that's kind of an example where the language of the game kind of meets the design in kind of in a flavorful way and kind of trying to accomplish a lot of things. I think that game does it pretty well, but it's easy to see how a lot of games could try to do that and fail.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure. That what doesn't get talked about, I think, in general when it comes to game design, is that it's when you read someone like Chris Crawford or something like that, they do talk about this stuff. He's aware of the all the cultural semiotics, just to put it that way, that are in play when you're trying to design something that someone's going to come to with expectations, and are they going to make sense of it or not? Some of those expectations are purely habitus. They're what's in the person's fingers with a controller or a mouse and keyboard, and some of it is, the associations they have of hot or cold or animals or whatever. But I think in most discussions of game design, it tends, like with most things, to just shy away from the whole cultural context thing, because it's just it doesn't, all that stuff goes without saying. So let's talk about the other stuff as if that's all that really matters. More technical stuff about level design or
Yeah. And the nightmare that this all leads to is BioShock Infinite. It's very playable, but God knows, don't think about it. Don't start that.
Well, I remember, every time I think about BioShock Infinite, I remember, Stuart, that you had a class that did a sort of deep dive into it, and at the end you found that it just was a lot more empty than you initially thought it was.
Yeah, we all hated the game. They hated me. We all hated each other. Exactly.
It's such an because you can do that with a million different books, right?
Well, so this is interesting because I started playing BioShock and I set it down relatively early into it.
The first or into
The first one.
Okay.
The first one, yeah.
So I'm wondering what did everyone come to sort of
Infinite,
feel alienated by?
it's hyper violent. It's repetitive in the way that these games are. And I think I just wasn't in a room full of gamers. And if you begin to ask questions about the story that's being told, there's nothing but contradictory answers.
Yeah.
It's a slave uprising. No, not really.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think there's going to be a lot of growing pains on how to do deep critical analysis of games.
Yes.
And I think that's one of them. Like some of them that you might expect to have be better suited for that may not be. You know, it's not as obvious as text. You know, like if you want to do a deep analysis of Finnegans Wake, okay, obviously this is ripe for that. You know, but we don't have that same type of thing in games. And also, I think the other problem with games sometimes is that the really experimental games, the games that are really doing a lot, tend to be shorter because they're designed not by major studios.
Right.
They're designed by
On a
smaller.
budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't spent a lot of time trying to teach or work with students in something like beginner's guide.
Do you hold onto the ball
Oh,
and you
maybe.
can walk through?
Maybe.
Yeah, because it's heavy and you won't be blown away.
And those are cannonballs.
But I can't pick them up.
Maybe you'll learn like ability to lick it up, and then you'll put it in your belly.
Yeah,
walk
that might
across.
be it.
Yeah.
Instead, I'll just kind of like.
Oh,
alright,
no!
I can go back to speedrunning. I bet you, like in speedrunning, if there's people who probably can make that jump if it's.
I did
you know,
it the
if
last
speeds
time.
up the
I did
game.
it the last time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's speedrunning is fascinating because of all the glitches they find in the games. I remember.
Oh, we have a deep analysis. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No,
we have
no,
a
go
comment,
ahead.
But we can go to that after.
Oh, I was just gonna say that Double Fine had a speedrunner of Psychonauts on, and they were just taken away by how much he was breaking the game to do a speedrunner. Like, they didn't even think about all the stuff that this person was doing to make the levels go faster. You know, that he would come up to an obstacle that they'd be like, well, this is going to take a while, and he'd just, like, skip right over it.
Yeah. So the comment is from GSGMSU. Deep analysis is hard when you're stuck wondering why. For example, butterflies here apparently represent your health and ... something else. So
Yeah.
you collect them but get no healing out of it. What's with that?
I was wondering the same thing earlier. Do you collect butterflies to fill that gauge, which I assume is your sonic power, and then when that's filled, do you get life on top of that?
I don't know. I thought it was filling my life, but
I
it
thought
wasn't.
it was filling your
It's
life
certainly
too.
not.
Yeah.
They're dead on.
And why would butterflies? I mean, butterflies would recover your health because you're like, right? Maybe you're a natural predator of butterflies. Like, I guess
Maybe.
do
Could
both
be.
bats and iguanas eat insects? Maybe that's like what we're trying to get here.
Yeah, maybe.
Wait, is
Sequel
that an
would be from the
iguana or is
butterfly's
that a
perspective.
chameleon?
Yes, I suppose they do.
Horror survival game.
I think this has been a great discussion to kind of begin to sort of sketch out these different dimensions of a game experience and what might end up putting us off a game, as with BioShock Infinite or not, right? Like, part of it, this is kind of like semiotic dissonance. What exactly are these butterflies supposed to be about,
Yeah.
right? You know,
Yeah.
at a different level, you could have, you know, something like Octodad, right? It's not really about the semiotics. It's about like the habitus. It's about like, can I get myself to do that or
Yeah.
not? You know, and
And the
that's-
dissonance in that game is built in. I mean, it's the dissonance of this makes no sense why nobody would realize that you're an octopus. I mean, that's built into the game.
well, yes, but what I'm highlighting is the dissonance that's utterly practical.
Yeah,
Like your body and your controls and
Which
what
is
you're
also
trying
built
to
in,
do,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
which is built in to the game, right? Versus, you know, something like what we were saying before, like we don't know where to go,
yeah.
which is at a very kind of broad level than just kind of what do butterflies represent.
Yeah.
What am I supposed to be doing, you know? And then all those sort of all of those are going on at the same time, you know, for any player. And maybe over time with certain games like BioShock Infinite, you come to realize,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
like
What's that like T.S. Eliot's?
there's nothing so
signifying
appealing.
Nothing, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of unappealing things, and there's no dimension that's so appealing it's gonna override everything else. You know?
I mean, here we've got like vague South American imagery, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Sort of
South
Mayan,
Pacific.
yeah.
Maybe Pacific, yeah, like kind of like a Maui
Thinking like the
statue
Easter-
or Easter Island stuff. I mean,
Gumball
really, it's a
Eye.
Can you,
hodgepodge.
so obviously that's not invisible. It must just be like you can't stand on it.
So is it immediately
Uh,
intuitive that you can go into this first-person mode?
Somebody told me there was a tip.
Huh.
Oh,
On a
shit.
loading screen.
No, it was a tip from a book in a cage, of course.
Okay.
So you just need to like basically stop all of these from glowing along this way, and then you'll get something.
Yeah, I'm hoping I get a
seems
book from up there.
much more interesting. Oh, I think you gotta wait until it lens.
Yeah. I almost had it, but yeah.
It seems to me it would be a little more interesting if those were all just completely invisible.
Well, they were.
Like they looked intangible, maybe. But
Yeah,
you
they
could sort of
weren't.
see
Well,
the
they.
shimmery outline.
Oh, damn it!
Oh,
You gotta jump when it's coming down.
Yeah.
Count to 3 before you jump next time.
I want to get through this. So what they were before was that you couldn't jump on them until you did the Sonic thing with those statues.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So now, and why that is, I don't know, but I mean, there's. Okay, come on.
Ready?
yeah, as it's coming.
Now.
No. Yeah.
There we go.
There we go.
Oh my god.
Almost too much.
But that one doesn't move platforms. That
No,
one
yeah,
opens
they
the
don't
box.
necessarily. Right.
Is this the only place
Hmm?
that these little statues are in? Is this level maybe? Or just
I
this
think
area?
so. Yeah.
They're not
Is-
like ubiquitous throughout the game.
Is GSG MSU's at Game Studies Group, Michigan State?
Yep.
University,
yeah.
right?
Uh,
Worst enemy in platformers is oneself.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's very true.
I've been playing a lot of Super Mario Maker 2 this summer.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And that game, your worst enemy is by far like yourself, and the frustration you feel over not being able to complete
Right,
your
totally.
level.
I really hate that feeling like when you get to the end of a level and you die, and then you try to replay the level, and everything is so much harder. Like you just had
yeah.
some beginner's luck.
Oh, yeah.
after-
You know, platformers are the most athletic of the genres that I can think of, of computer games, right? They're really about that kind of controlling your performance through space of your body.
I mean, I guess
It's pretty
it
interesting.
depends on how you define athletic, right? 'Cause
Well,
like,
yeah, that's a. I
like
mean,
a competitive
motor-
esport maybe might
yeah.
have more.
No, that's right. I mean, but when we say
Yeah.
athletics, we often think about gross motor
Yeah,
skills.
exactly.
Well, track and field. I mean,
Yeah.
sort of individual performance as opposed to team competitive.
There's that aspect. There's also the the fine motor, gross motor thing does come up there as well, right? Like if you're an Olympic, bow shooter, or something like that. That of course is athletic, but when we talk about athletics, we're not usually thinking about that kind of example, So it
What's the
tends to be
game where
biased.
you? I think it's like QWE
Kwok.
ASD.
Kwok. Yeah.
Oh,
Where you're trying to
yes.
run.
Yeah.
I just saw a paper on that at Wandering Games.
Yeah. That.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a game that you can really look into in terms
Oh.
of like, I mean, it's stupid on the face of it, but it's interesting, because if only because it shows how so much
that
of
makes
a
it a lot,
yeah.
that made this puzzle a lot easier.
Oh crap!
Uh-oh.
Can you
The
jump
timing
out
is
around?
different.
Yeah, I think I have to jump over it.
Oh yeah, you got it.
Um,
I think you left a leaf though.
yeah.
Don't go
let's
back
do it.
for it. You have one left.
Yeah, I only have one thing left.
Although, the dissonance with Kwok.
Ah, shoot.
Oh, you can get the leaf now.
Oh.
Oh no.
Yep.
Oh.
Anyway, the dissonance with Kwok.
Thanks, GSG MSU. They got to run to a meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, we should return the favor and join their stream sometime.
Absolutely.
Is that it's just racist. It's just a racist game. Just face it.
This? Yeah.
Really?
No, not
Oh.
this.
I don't know how. Why would?
Why is Kwok racist?
Playing a person of color who represents an impoverished country.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
I didn't know that there was a story.
Whoops.
Well, I mean.
Well, it's just the visuals
I
of it.
thought that you could
has
choose
brown skin.
the skin color of your avatar, but I must
But
be
yeah,
wrong.
I don't know. I've only ever seen it that way.
It's been like a decade since I played Kwok. It feels so. I want to go ahead and
It's
just
not
pull
that
it up.
old, is it?
It's pretty old.
2008 Ragdoll Simulator. So
Speaking of racist games, that big thing that Amazon announced, that just
Yeah.
jaw-dropping
No.
thing of the new world and
No.
shooting a bunch of faces.
Yeah.
Did they cancel that project from Outcry or anything, or is it still going?
I don't.
Remember this one? They were like, you get to be colonists, like you're dressed like the American colonialists, etc. With
Spanish,
the same kind of,
yeah.
and it makes it okay that you're shooting a bunch of people inhabiting this new world that you're going to because they're all faceless and zombies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Remember that? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, when we got that news, we shared it on our Slack to each other. I was just like, oh my gosh! Just when you think,
So can you jump over these
you
ones?
know, like,
What?
Can you wait for these, or do you have to wait, or can you jump over?
I think I
these?
could jump over them. I don't feel like it.
I mean,
Alright.
it's still only this project.
I think it is.
Oh,
I've only
wow.
heard of it from you. I don't know anything
Oh
about it. Really.
crap!
I remember you mentioning it in another lunch zone a
Yeah.
few months
All
ago.
the controversy over Detroit Make Human too, or with
We could just grab it.
He's the voice on your shoulder. He's the little Mistopheles saying, "Hey, you know, you can do this.
Yeah, right.
It won't cost you."
Lately.
Look at all those butterflies. Look, you could have run into the fire so many times.
But they don't always seem to increase your health, or do you know?
He's at full health right now, right?
Oh, that's why
We
you're not
haven't
seeing
No,
it?
discovered
I'm-
what they. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Are there differences?
Maybe
between
it's like a
butterflies?
Mario thing where you have to get 100 and you get another.
every 10 or something. But I've also seen it be
Yes,
like
they kept up with that.
pop right up one after the other too. So I find it very confusing.
Maybe there's slightly different colored. I don't know.
Jump from that little bridge, you can probably get up to that space.
Or post.
It's boss battle time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, this is a good way to
Okay,
end.
well,
Ancient angular
9 minutes.
stone block.
The great Rambo.
No need for thine double glazed windows.
I have to admit, like, we're sort of talking a lot of shit about this game, but it's charming,
it is.
and I want to play it.
Yeah, no, it is, and I would probably enjoy it a lot more if I was playing it. I enjoy it actually. Okay, so what is he doing?
Wait, why does he hate glass?
Glass is a
'Cause he's-
natural predator of ramps? I don't know. Hey,
Oh,
Kelly, how's
crap.
it going? Can you get in that little
Hey,
circle there?
Kelly,
Did you see
you
it?
feeling better?
I am a little bit. They have to see me tomorrow again.
See what I mean?
What?
The circles on the side, they look like little
Oh.
drainage.
No, you know what I bet that is? I bet
You can
after I
get in
hit
there?
him,
Yeah.
it's going to be fire up there.
Oh,
what's
yeah,
that?
yeah.
All right.
Ah!
So close.
Oh my gosh.
Normally sliding down hills is fun.
Oh man, I am not doing well in this.
Are you able to hop over the logs?
Yeah, you want to try it?
No. Hey.
You know what you should do is just not hit the logs, I think.
Oh, thank you.
Nathan, those logs are hurting you. There's butterflies there, by the way. You might want
I
to
think-
pick up the butterflies.
Oh my
Oh no!
I really appreciate that, right? I do think we need more Captain Obvious comments to the person playing the game. I think that would make
Well,
the
you have
streams
full
a lot
health,
more
and
entertaining. I love that.
There's some butterflies in the left corner if you get hit.
I also want to say, you know, one of the things I really appreciate about Lunch Zone is Nathan's willingness to pilot. You know, so much. All of these games are like, oh.
Oh my
I look at
god!
them
Now
and I'm
this
like,
is
boy.
this is something I do. Oh, okay, that was a much abbreviated dialogue, but it was
Yeah.
still dialogue after you died. Not cool. Oh,
I'm gonna try to
okay.
hit him in the eye.
Yeah, that's pretty tall.
Oh,
Oh, the
yeah.
teeth.
Break his teeth.
Oh.
Definitely wouldn't have thought I was the big
Yeah,
weak
right.
point.
Again.
Man, who would think that
Oh, now with fire, yeah.
anthropomorphic ramp wouldn't have need for breathing?
Okay. All right. So it's a different pattern this time.
So it looks like now you'll have to jump, as
Yeah.
opposed to before where you might have been able to not have to.
Oh crap! Ah, that's something I don't.
Oh no.
Ooh, even on the way down.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, so see that increases my green bar, but it doesn't increase the.
Oh,
Right.
yeah. The bar, it doesn't increase the bar of butterflies.
Right, exactly. Of course not.
We're not noticing that there are two shades of pink, and the fuchsia butterflies increase your green bar, and the
You can't take away the teeth.
Oh no!
Man, those thorns are just.
Yeah. Come on.
It's like, oh, you finally managed to get up to the top. Here's a
Right.
cactus.
Although I guess if you just stood in that corner, the fire wouldn't get you. So
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
still.
But I still have to navigate over there without hitting the thorns.
You know,
How does it
walk up
control?
there.
Does it do you feel pretty in control, or is it really loosey goosey like controlling
It's
Luigi?
not bad, but uh-oh.
Controlling Luigi.
Whoa.
Is he the gold standard for loosey goosey?
A little bit.
Yeah, kind of. It's not bad. It's not. This feels a little slidey.
Yeah.
So it's a little harder to control.
Oh wait, you're back on him breathing fire, or was he always doing that?
He was always doing it.
It goes back and forth. He'll drop his teeth.
Maybe you're supposed to jump over it? Yeah. Are you on the second stage now then?
Stage.
And now the third stage
This
of
is
the
the
fight?
second stage.
Oh,
This
okay.
is-
3 teeth.
I couldn't remember if he...
He started
Breathe
had to start
fire.
over, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not breathing. That's burping.
Oh, of course. These games have a little scatological sense of humor.
You can do it.
Alright.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. That's gonna be that's gonna be fire. Wow, you can't jump.
No.
Wow.
On the way down on that
That's
distance.
rough. What's the age group?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well,
Yeah, we were speculating it
Made
might be like
for like
you know,
30-year-olds.
moms and dads playing with kids, moms and dads remembering Nintendo stuff they
Oh, man.
I wonder if it's even moms and dads, or if it's just, like, people who...
Oh, man.
I will say, I do want to say
It's so
this. I
dramatic.
don't think this game is that hard. I'm not very good at it. But I don't think this game is that hard.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
Nathan is somebody I've seen, play Get Over It, and
Ugh.
Cuphead and things like that. These really difficult.
I think
Games.
also, like, we're returning to our discussion earlier
come on.
about how the visual stimuli don't really match the gameplay. Like, why to get up a hill you do roll? That's like the opposite of what I want to do if
Right.
I'm trying to go up a hill, right?
Yeah,
Like-
that's very true.
Typically, people roll down things.
Ah!
What is
How
he
much-
again? Like a.
He's a ramp.
No. The
You got, yeah.
main character.
A chameleon
Still
or an
3
iguana.
minutes. Oh my god.
Iguana. Okay.
Yeah, the jumping over shouldn't be, it seems like it shouldn't be quite as mechanically difficult as it is to do
Yeah.
the jump over.
You just don't have very much height. So you
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
you
gotta
gotta-
time it
Right.
exactly right.
Okay. Alright.
It'd be nice if you had a little kind of blocking maneuver where you, if you knew you were heading for
Because the
you could
chameleon
protect yourself.
and Laylee is a female bat.
Oh.
Oh my god. There. Take that. I gotta hear you talk again.
He says his smile's ruined, but next time you come up, he's got 3 teeth.
Yeah, I know. It's like I did him a favor.
You're just applying non-ramp beauty standards to ramps.
That is true. Yeah.
Good. Nice.
Get 'em.
Oh!
Oh.
Alright, I'll continue beating my head against this for the last 2 minutes.
I feel like there's like a ratio of difficulty to satisfaction, but then like once you cross a certain threshold,
Just becomes frustration.
Yeah.
Well, I've shared this story before, but
Whoa, I can't
Moses-
believe you got up there.
Oh yeah.
Moses Wolfenstein, if anyone knows him, he's a games and learning guy.
Good job, no damage.
Who I got to know years ago, and I once saw him at a Games Learning Society conference in Madison give a talk playing Super Meat Boy on the last level while giving his talk and beating it.
Oh man.
Okay.
I will say,
Incredible.
yeah,
It did take him a few tries, but while you're talking to an audience, playing the last level.
not to take anything away from that, but I will say what's interesting about Super Meat Boy and those types of games, oh my god, is that if you play it enough to win, after a certain, it almost becomes muscle memory. You like get into this zone that you can that you can go through it. You know, I did this with Ori when we replayed Ori.
Third stage.
There's this stage that you have to jump up through this tree the water's filling up, and it took me like 20 tries the first time. And so when we were playing it, you know, I got to that point and I'm like, okay, this is going to take the rest of the time here. But I got it on the second try, you know, and I think that's not necessarily unusual for those games that you do that over and over again.
Yeah. You become habituated to it.
Oh, hey, you got some
Wow.
air on that one.
It's a
Oh!
lot of practice on the whole kind of jumping thing, which is almost like you get more height if you're not moving, you know, so fast.
Yeah. Oh.
Give us life now, please, butterflies.
Give us something other than
Nope.
what the representation of the game says you're gonna get.
All right, I'll
Yeah.
take that.
Like Kelly and I were talking yesterday.
Oh!
Well, there's always
noble
next
effort.
time.
That's right.
But yeah, Kelly and I were talking yesterday because I was playing Dota 2, which is actually a very mechanically intensive game, and I was just like sucking so much because I was trying to like talk about like some complex things while trying to play
Yeah.
the game, and like I just was so bad. And like there's
That
a
was
point.
the thing that really astounded me, right? When I saw Moses do that, you know, this is a professional conference and he's playing the game at the same time. He's talking about.
All right, well, thanks everybody for joining.
I have the blog assignment.
Okay, cool.
Do some writing.
Bye, everybody.